Good morning to everyone who's joining. My name is Martin Pearce. I'm the bursar at Selwyn College, and I'm hoping very much that you can hear me. If you can see my lips move and not making any sound, then please use the chat function to let me know. And hopefully everything's okay technically, and I should be joined shortly by Mike Sewell, the senior tutor as well. We'll aim to start at 11:15.
Hello again.
Hello, Mike. Hi, I've introduced myself to those who are joining. And hope that they can hear us. I've suggested using the chat function if they can see our lips move but can't hear anything. Nobody has sent me a chat. Oh, hang on, I've got a chat here. We can hear you. Marvellous. Excellent.
Good.
So that's good news. So we'll give everybody a few more minutes because it's an 11:15 start. But
Absolutely.
We've already got 20 people joined, which is great.
Slightly weird moment where nothing's going on, which happens on Zoom as well as in a meeting room.
So I've got a few more people joining, so just give you a couple more minutes.
Slightly alarmingly, it went to 23 briefly and then has come down again by 1. And in the finest tradition of open days, there's a downpour just as we're about to start.
Well, looking at those who had pre-registered, I think we do have nearly everybody, but I feel it's slightly invidious if we started actually ahead of time, so we should give people till 11:15.
Yeah. Watch the clock tick slowly on.
Right, well, it is 11:15, so can Mike and I welcome you all to this rather unusual Open Day webinar. I'm actually relatively new in the post of Bursar. I've been here for 6 months at Selwyn and delighted to join. So I don't have the experience of having done it face to face, but I'm sure that would be much preferable for all kinds of reasons. But we're very pleased that technology has enabled us to at least have an opportunity to talk to you all today. And as many of you are already finding, the chat function will be the best way to ask questions as well. So I think Mike is going to talk a little bit, first of all, about the educational side, and then I'll talk a little bit about finance and accommodation, but we can accommodate questions in between as well. And so if you use the chat function, which hopefully you can find, to ask questions, then we will have a go at answering them. And if we can't answer them in the session itself, we can get back to you separately as we hold addresses, etc. So Mike, would you like to kick off?
Yes, feels slightly odd addressing myself on screen and Martin rather than addressing a room full of people, but that's the world we're currently in. So welcome everybody to this open day session for parents and supporters. We hope to be able to answer your questions and try to keep the talk rather than the discussion to the necessary minimum. And what I want to start off by saying is a little bit about the offer that Selwyn College makes. And like all Cambridge colleges, we're responsible for the accommodation, the home base, the small group teaching and the pastoral support of our students within the context of large group teaching, such as lectures, seminars, practicals, field trips being done and coordinated, as are the examinations, by the university centrally. One of the great advantages of this system, both educationally and personally for our students, is that they get a very, very significant amount of very individual support, feedback, and guidance, both from their directors of studies, who are an academic in their subject, who helps oversee their academic progress and organises the small group teaching, the supervisions, as we call them, tutorials as they'd be called in Oxford, but also then the pastoral tutor, who is an academic outside the student subject and who can help mediate academic, personal, financial, health, or other issues as they arise, and gets to know their relatively small number of tutees at any given time quite well over the 3 or 4 years that the students are here. So both in terms of academic feedback and personal support, this is a very individual facing system and a very student focused system, helped greatly in Selwyn by the fact that all of our students are on a single site. All 3 or 4 years of undergraduates live within the single footprint of the college. Nobody is more than about 400 yards from the food, which when I'm talking to parents is what I stress. If I'm talking to students, I might mention the bar as well, but it's a coffee bar for today's purposes. So what else makes Selwyn distinctive? That strong sense of community is part of it. We have high academic standards. It looks as though this year well over a third of our finalists will obtain first class degrees from the marks we've had in so far. And those high standards, that academic focus, also then feed into the admissions process. What we look for in our prospective students is the capacity to thrive on the course for which they are applying. You may already have heard that from the admissions tutors, any of you who were in the session that recently finished, but it's very much to stress that we look for aptitude in problem solving, critical thinking, and other necessary skills that someone will need to do well on their course. We can be the friendliest college in Cambridge. We like to think we are, but I'm sure other colleges would say the same. And yet someone can still be unhappy if they're on the wrong course. In decades as a tutor, I've hardly ever had a student say, I'm unhappy because I think I'm at the wrong college. And if they ever have, it's usually because there's been a bad breakup and they'll get over it. On the other hand, students do sometimes say, I'm unhappy, I think I'm on the wrong course. And in terms of what advice might I give parents and supporters, it's try to make sure that instead of obsessing about college choice, Selwyn's the best one, we think that, we're sure of that. But instead of obsessing about college choice, obsess about making sure the course is right in terms of those key thinking skills, problem solving, aptitude issues for the particular individual concerned, because that is what our admissions process will be probing in detail. And for someone to be happy here, they've got to be on the right course. So love of subject, supercurricular activity that goes beyond what's required of them to get their top grades in A-level, IB, or other qualification systems, and making sure that as well as having the grades, this is something, a subject that they know what they're letting themselves in for, and that they will then spend 3 or 4 years immersed in that subject and continue to enjoy it. And if I may be a little bit directive towards the audience today, please let them make their own minds up. Cambridge courses and the experience of our graduates bears this out very, very strongly, year in, year out, do not depend on choice of course for career prospects. The Cambridge teaching and learning, the Cambridge community, the peer-to-peer learning that goes on within the colleges gives people rich CVs and a raft of skills that top employers value highly. Presenting information to experts on the basis of individual or collective research, group research, being able to master a new topic, a new subject very, very quickly, being able to present in writing, out loud, or in whatever format, confidently and clearly, are skills that are honed by the Cambridge teaching and learning and the peer-to-peer environment tremendously well. And that's irrespective of whether someone's reading philosophy or pure maths or economics or engineering or medicine or history. And I'm sure Martin, is someone who's relatively recently come out of a more business and commercial world, would agree with me on that point. So don't think I want this job, therefore I must do that course. Yeah, if you want to be a surgeon, of course, but even then you could do the graduate medical course having done a previous degree in another subject. So think about what's going to get the best out of someone, think about what they're going to enjoy most for 3 years, and if they come here, any course opens lots and lots of career pathways. Very few of our courses would ever close any of those down. Though as an arts graduate, I do still lament the fact that you've got to have a science degree if you want to be an astronaut. So I'll pause there. I'll come back to some of the questions we've got in the chat, but I'll let Martin do his side of the presentation to start with.
Okay, yes, we've got a few questions coming in, so do keep them coming as you think of them, and we're collecting them as we go. So I'm going to attempt some technology and do a share screen to put up a few slides that will help me just talk through some of the things I wanted to mention. So let's see if this works. Tell me if it doesn't. Right, let's go. Right, hopefully you will now see hopefully you're now seeing a picture of Selwyn College on your screen saying Selwyn College Open Day, July 2020, thoughts from the Bursar. So shout in the chat if you don't. So I just wanted to go through a few things. I mean, first of all, people may be thinking, what on earth is a Bursar anyway? So I'll just run through that. And then a bit about finances, student finances particularly, much of which you will know. Accommodation, particular to Selwyn, and some other things worth a mention about both Cambridge and Selwyn particularly. But just a bit about me. Mike mentioned I've been in the world of business, but many years ago I came to Cambridge as a student. I came through a comprehensive school that had been a secondary modern, if you know what one of those is, in the 70s and 80s, and came to Cambridge. I was the first person in my family who came to Cambridge. I found it a surprise. It wasn't something I knew what to expect. I found it a pleasant surprise. The whole Cambridge experience was good. But when I arrive here now as Bursar and see what is done to make sure that everybody can have an opportunity to get the best out of their time at Cambridge, it is so much further forward. So whatever people's background, we're interested in the brightest and best, and we will do what we can to help make it a great experience for all of you. So just to run through a bit about what the Bursar does. So I'm really the head of the or the administrative side of the college. All things financial, so look after the college income and expenditure. So that means I take a close interest in catering and rents and so on. Operational, so catering, porters, building and maintenance, housekeeping, gardens, and we have conferences who help us keep the cost of the rents down for our students, and also to make sure we comply with all the regulations, and in particular health and safety, which is really important, of course. And in terms of finances, again, as I say, some of you will know this. So obviously there's a key difference between home and overseas students in terms of tuition fees. For the home fees, you'll probably know that the tuition fees are £9,250 a year, and that all of that can be covered by a tuition fee loan. If you are not on the home fees status, overseas students is quite a bit more expensive. So if you think you're not home fees, then it's important to determine your fee status early so that you're sure what you would be doing. One note is that you may have seen in the press is that from the academic year 2021 to 22 onwards, students from EU countries would be categorised as overseas and no longer as home. So that's an important thing to take into account. So the loans, as you probably know, are repayable depending on income after you've been at university. So there is no need to worry about paying back loans while a student. And indeed, until you reach a certain income threshold, there wouldn't be any repayments, but then it becomes dependent on your income. And the living costs loans are payable in exactly the same way. So home students can get a maintenance loan. The minimum, which anyone can have if you have a household income of 58,000 or more, is 3,410 next year. The maximum, if you have a much lower income, is 10,539. And then if you're in between, you get a sliding scale of that. And that obviously then needs topping up with either parental contributions or, moving on to a very important next point, the Cambridge Bursary Scheme. So this is a very helpful addition to financial capability. So the university itself has a university-wide scheme that helps people from lower to middle income households. So for anybody with a household income of less than 25,000, it provides a bursary of £3,500, and then that reduces on a sliding scale up to income levels of 42,000. But Selwyn also participates, which not every college does, in an additional top-up scheme, which provides further help both for people at those income levels and also a little bit further up the income range as well. So there are a number of things which will help pay for the living costs. And one thing I would really want to emphasise is the student support funds that the college has. And these are not sort of in extremis or things that people should feel worried about going to. We make it our business to have a good amount of student support available on a financial basis. And indeed, many of our alumni have contributed specifically to help current students through their time at college. And first of all, it's not just a matter of hardship, but also we find if family circumstances change through time, it can take quite a long time for that to work its way through the student loan company. So people will find that they do need funding, and particularly we're mindful of all the things that are going on at the moment, that people are finding their family circumstances are changing. So it also includes bridging if, for example, loans arrive late and those kind of things. And Mike has already referenced the tutor system that's really important for pastoral care. The tutor is absolutely the gateway to all these things. And there's, although Mike and I review all the applications, you'll find that the tutors are absolutely the champion of their students. So people wouldn't feel if they're going to their tutor, it's not going to be to try and make a case for receiving some help. It'll be to get them to make the case for them. And it would be very rare for us to not be able to help. So it's a core part of the college. It is something that many of our students take advantage of, and we're very pleased to do it, and we regard it as a core part of what we do. Accommodation. So Mike's already mentioned that we have enough rooms for every undergraduate who wants one, and also that it's all on the one site, which is not true, of course, of all colleges. And of course, Selwyn, when it was built, it was quite on the outskirts of Cambridge, but now it's quite central. So we have the Sidgwick site right next door with lots of the arts faculties, and also the West Cambridge science and maths sites very close by as well. And it is still very close to the centre of town. So all our rooms are on either in the three main courts of the colleges, or we have a number of nearby houses, although they mainly house postgraduates, but some undergraduates live in them as well. So it's very close together, and I know that some colleges, for example, the freshers would all be out in some remote court that isn't close to the college. Well, that's not true at Selwyn. We have our Cripps court, where all the fresher students would go. There's no sharing. All the rooms in Cripps Court are en suite, and 64% of all the rooms across the college are en suite as well. A really helpful thing about Cambridge is you only pay for when you're here. So obviously, many places you'd be obliged to pay for pretty much the whole year. Here, you only pay for the 30 weeks of term per year. And you can see the weekly rents. These are next year's weekly rents. It depends on the quality of the room. But there aren't any extras. Now, in the past, we, along with other colleges, had things like kitchen fixed charges and facilities charges, but we don't have that any longer. It's a single rental payment, and that includes utilities and broadband and access to our IT help desk, etc. So you know what you're in for. And then there's also an option to stay in the vacations. So if you wish to do that, you can just pay the extra rent at the same rates. But if you don't wish to do that, you will only need to pay for the 30 weeks of term per year. The one thing you would need to do is to take your belongings with you so that we can keep the rents down by using rooms for our conference guests. Other things worth a mention. So we're very proud of our catering here at Selwyn. Clearly, life is going to be a little different at first to what we would normally expect, but we are spending a lot of our time working on getting things back to normal. And we fully expect there to be dining in the normal way when we start the term, albeit not the formal halls that we would normally have twice a week in term. But we have a new servery, which was only built a couple of years ago. Good quality food, some great chefs, and it costs maybe £4 or £5 a day. There's always a vegetarian option, and other dietary requirements are well catered for, although we usually need a bit more notice. One of the things we've done more recently is the hall, which sits next to the servery, where people actually sit down and eat, is now open all day for coffees and snacks during term time, and not just at the main meal times as people pop in. We also have a great new bar, which only opened last year, and we're actually looking to reopen that on Saturday in line with the national guideline relaxations. It's open all afternoon and evening generally in term time, and it's pretty focused on being a coffee bar as well as a regular bar in the evenings. It's worth saying transport in Cambridge is really easy. Students, as might know, really bike and walk everywhere, and therefore you haven't got extra transport costs. Porters who have a bit of a fearsome reputation certainly don't deserve it at Selwyn. So we have a Porters Lodge open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's a really important part of the overall care of our students. The porters are friendly, they are here to help, and they are a first port of call at all times of the day and night if needed, and that's a really important facility for all our students. And on a minor point, although theft is rare, it's worth having contents insurance for any of your kit. So that's really a sort of whistle-stop tour of what we provide in terms of financial and accommodation support. So I guess we should open it up to questions, Mike.
Martin, do you want to carry on and deal with the question about tuition fees that Mr. Roscrow
Yes, I'm just catching up because I couldn't see the chat while I was talking. So yes, so the question is, if I chose to pay the tuition fees for my son, are there any extra or additional college fees that I would also need to pay? The answer, as an undergraduate, the answer is, and as a home fee student, if you are a home fee student, the answer is no. So the tuition fees are payable whether you take a loan or choose to pay it yourself. That's really a matter between yourselves and the student loan company. Obviously, there's the accommodation rentals that I just talked about, and of course, the cost of actually taking meals. But no, there aren't any other separate college fees if you are a home student undergraduate.
Then there are also a couple of food-related
Yeah,
things
I can see that.
properly bursarial.
Is halal food available in college? Yes, it is. And we have every day on our website, we have the whole menu. So you can always see what there is, and it is clearly marked what is for various dietary requirements, including halal. And yes, that is certainly available.
I just add a small story that comes from one of the students who's just would have been graduating in person last week, but for the current health crisis, who actually keeps kosher. But the same principle applies. And our students did a sort of message board for one another with their memories of being in Selwyn. And that particular student chose as one of her memories the amount of cling film around her special dietary food at formal halls. So that students who have special dietary requirements, it's not just about the cafeteria, it's also about the formal dining that takes place. And the catering department is tremendous at working with and there's another question about nut allergies. We've got a number of students currently in residence with varying degrees of severity of such allergies. The catering department will deal with everybody individually and work with them to meet their particular needs and requirements.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So we don't have, of course, such a huge number of students that we can't deal with everybody on a case-by-case basis. And it's one of the real attractions, I guess, of the college system in Cambridge is that things are on a human scale. So 120, 130 undergraduates join us each year. So really, when we get down to more individual cases, Matt Rowe, the head of catering, and his team are really good going through in advance as to what the requirements are. So we would pick up one by one your exact circumstances. So there isn't a sort of broad brush nut allergy response. We would want to understand exactly what the situation is, and then we can make sure that we cater for that instance. So we would certainly want to, if your son got a place, we would certainly pick up before arrival on the requirements.
And we do so partly so that this past year we had a group of students who'd got varying degrees of food allergies in the first year, and we actually deliberately grouped them sharing a kitchen in year one. They will have choice about what they do next year and the year after through our balloting system for rooms, but then we were able to alert them that they were living with other people who shared similar sorts of concerns at varying degrees. And a couple of them have commented very favorably that meant they were reassured coming in that their kitchen mates would actually be sensitive to their needs, and it actually worked out quite well for all concerned. Martin, there's also a question about.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I can see a couple more that look like mine. So one is about laundry costs. Good question. Well, laundry is a sort of pay-as-you-use process. So we do have laundry on site, and yes, we do charge for that. Obviously, a bit like food, it's depending on how much you use it. So it's not hugely expensive, but yes, it's available, and yes, you would pay separately for that. And then there's also a question from Luke Burgess saying, is the rent payable termly or yearly? The answer to that is it's termly, so 3 times a year. The way things work at the college is that each student receives a college bill, and on your very first bill, you would obviously have the rent charge. We give students 3 to 4 weeks to pay that, which is a bit longer than many colleges allow, to make sure that in most cases, the loans have come through, etc., so that you've got the funds available. And I know from personal experience, we do get instances where people say to us, well, I haven't got that funding yet, so can I have an extension? And the answer is always yes if you ask. So we don't expect anybody to need to get stressed about not being able to fund such things. And then what happens is, as you go through, a lot of your meals can be placed onto that college bill and other costs besides, and so then that ticks over to the beginning of the next term and then is added to the rent then. So there's a certain amount of effectively credit going on here, but the rent is payable 3 times a year at the beginning of terms.
Okay, so I've probably been free riding for the last few questions and shunting them all Martin's way, so I better start responding to one or two, and I'll try and divide them into ones that are about the admissions process and ones that are about life here. And I'll start with the ones about life here. Somebody asked about, would it be possible to visit in the next couple of months? Once restrictions ease, we will welcome visits, but we operate within the national system where at the moment it's slightly unclear whether coming into college would be regarded as essential, and we're currently somewhat closed down to the outside world, but my hope is that that will relatively quickly change. I think the advice there would be contact our admissions office or our Porters Lodge to ask whether it's possible, particularly the admissions office. Storage space and other international student questions. Yes, we do provide international storage during vacations. And also many students who go home can have lockable storage in their own rooms for small amounts of their stuff, which is then secure within their own room. Can students, international students arrive early? Yes, we would generally actively encourage that. In 2020, even more so, should there be quarantining or other restrictions still in place this coming September. But in the future, yes, we would routinely do that for the very reasons that you've suggested in the chat: opening bank accounts, getting their bearings, getting to grips with the horrible English climate or whatever it might be. We have a college nurse who is actually more present in this college than most colleges' nurses are. It's a year-round nursing provision, not only in teaching term, and the nurse is a very visible presence in the college 5 days a week. And she is readily accessible also online and responds very well. During the current crisis, she's been very supportive of various of our students who've been in residence and some who are back home but nonetheless consult her. Do we deal with specific medical conditions? Yes, routinely through the nurse and local GPs. We require our students to register locally. We've got a doctor's surgery that's less than 5 minutes walk from the college, and we work very closely with 2 or 3 local GP surgeries to help students manage any particular medical conditions that they may have. The same applies to SPLDs, not just dyslexia, dyspraxia, but also students who might be on the Asperger's autism spectrum, students with anxiety disorders or other. We will, in all of these things, whether it's diet, whether it's SPLDs, whether it's medical conditions physically, we will work with individual students. We've got a couple of students currently, one undergrad, one postgrad, who are in wheelchairs and have really serious mobility issues. We work with them. We've got another one where we set up a room in order for that student to be able to do physical therapy that is required for a medical condition that she has, and so on and so on. We will work with each student individually to help meet their needs rather than having a one-size-fits-all policy. It's one of the great things about having a community where we've got 120 new undergrads every year, maybe 50 to 100, maybe 100 postgrads coming in new every year. It's not a huge community to deal with. People are names, not numbers. On the more process, sorry, if I look down, I'm ticking off things I've jotted down. On the admissions process side of things, how many computer science places a year? At Selwyn, 2 or 3 or 4 offers would be made for computer science within a university-wide intercollegiate management of numbers in what is relatively a small computer science department. How we're going to handle the admissions process in 2020 to 21 is an interesting question, and one where we have not rushed to make a decision in June that may look foolish in December. And that, I'm afraid, means we are not going to be able to give you a definitive answer today. The situation we are in is that there is a working group of admissions tutors, senior tutors, and university representatives currently deliberating how best we may have to adapt. We have plenty of experience of interviewing remotely. We've done that with applicants from North America for quite a few years. There are always individual applicants who, for whatever reason, have not been able to come to interviews. And we're used to doing that. We're used to sending teams of interviewers overseas, which probably won't happen this year. And they also have some different experiences from the standard interview process. All I can give you at this point is watch this space on exact timings of interviews, exact format of interviews, whether remotely or in person, whether at the usual December timing or perhaps even at some slightly different timing. We are still deliberating carefully as the whole health emergency develops and evolves, and much will depend on whether there are repeated waves of spikes of cases in the country or internationally, or whether actually things, as we hope, might return much closer to normal by the autumn. The same is true of admissions assessments in the current emergency. How do we compare with the Oxford process? There is much less of a formal second interview process than there is at Oxford. In theology, in classics, and to an extent in Asian and Middle Eastern studies, there is a representation, philosophy too, of interviewers from another college within the process. In the numerically larger subjects, that would not be the case, and you would be interviewed at the preference or allocated open application college on behalf of all of the colleges. But be assured there is a very, very rigorous and detailed cross-colleges moderation process between the mid-December usual date for the end of interviews and the early to mid-January date at which decisions are finalised and communicated to applicants. And that involves a lot of colleagues across the colleges and within each college second guessing each other's provisional decisions in order to make sure that, as Martin said earlier, the best and the brightest and the best suited to the courses for which they've applied across the university get offers. And every year there are some subjects in which Selwyn will put students into that moderation process, the pooling process, to be taken and picked up at other colleges, and some subjects in which we will actually be taking people out of the pool. And it is not predictable entirely which subjects are which. So we may take every year about 25 or 30 students out of the pool. We may well put in 25, 30, 40 students who get picked up at other colleges through the pool. And the subject mix there varies year on year because we want the best of the gathered field for Cambridge to be the ones who are admitted, not just the best of a particular small field for the one college. History and modern languages, we would usually admit 1 or 2 students a year for what is a small tripos, where university-wide there may be 25 or 30 students admitted, so that usually works out an average of about 1 per college. And that's often true of many of our smaller courses, history of art, etc., would fit in that pattern as well. There were some questions about the supplementary application questionnaire and about the way in which we would view extracurricular activities. And you may have noticed when I was talking earlier, I talked about supercurricular. So not on the curriculum, but subject related, we greatly value. The extracurricular is ornamental as far as our admissions process is concerned and not substantive. Our students are incredibly talented. We have student journalists, student actors. We have had for many years, Hugh Laurie, Tom Hollander were students here back in the day. So it's not as though our students do not enjoy a hugely rich extracurricular life, whether it's sport or music or chapel life or the Union Society or the stage or volunteering. A number of our students volunteer for the Stimulus Maths Project, where Cambridge students go into primary schools and help with top-up maths skills, for example. All of that goes on, but that's not what gets you in. The subject aptitude is what gets you in. The problem solving, the suitability for your course is what gets you in, not the icing on the cake, which is the extracurricular activity. So supplementary questionnaire, the advice there would be, as Saul Packer has just asked about, it would be exactly that. It's about something that's not been on the UCAS personal statement. Don't just repeat it there, or we'll be just reading the same thing twice. And it's about particular Cambridge courses. And that may be especially true in courses like medicine, where Cambridge still has the strong science third year. Subjects like human, social, and political sciences, or natural sciences, where it's a multi-subject discipline where specialization comes later. So you don't apply in year one to be a biochemist or a sociologist. You apply to those big, broad courses, get the broad grounding, and then come to specialize as a second, third, or fourth year. And often the students find that they're surprised. They don't specialize in what they thought when they were 17 they would want to be doing when they're 21 and 22. And that's where the SAC comes into its own, but also anything else that's happened since the personal statement was written. Personal statements tend to get written in July, August, September. SAQs are submitted in later October. Things can happen. New developments are often good to put in. Or if you're applying for a different course in Cambridge than you are elsewhere, use the SAC to explain why Cambridge and UCAS to explain why the other 4 courses on the UCAS application. Pauses for breath and says, we would usually make about 10 or 12 maths offers a year, and usually would admit about 4 or 6 of those students to come and read maths. Martin, back over to you.
Well, I've got a couple more, one of which I don't know the answer to. So the first question was, obviously here is, are visitors allowed to stay overnight in the colleges, either in students' rooms or in other accommodation? So the answer is yes. Broadly, our main consideration is the fire regulations. If there was, God forbid, a fire in the college, we would want to know who is there. So we do require that if somebody is staying overnight in a student's room, that they're registered with the porters, and that's important. And I've also got a question, which is there a basketball court nearby? Which I have to say, I don't know the answer to that. However, Ashir, we have got your email address, and I will find out and let you know. So apologies, I don't know the answer to that one. The other thing I was just going to reflect on is COVID and what we're doing about it. So there was a question earlier about visiting the college. So at the moment, the college is pretty closed. As one might imagine, we have a limited number of students who've remained in Cambridge, but a lot of our activity at the moment is focused on returning to some kind of normality in the autumn. And in particular, focusing on making sure that we've got the facilities and space, first of all, to undertake the small group teaching in the college, but also that some of the more social side of college can take place. So, for example, how we operate dining and how we are able to use the bar and the library and the other facilities of the college, but do so in a safe way in a COVID world. And we're making very good progress towards that, and looking forward to welcoming people back. And assuming that that all proceeds well in the autumn, then the opportunity to make arrangements may well open up. But as you might imagine, our first priority is to make sure we deliver a safe and working environment under these new circumstances for all our new and returning students for this autumn. But we will be very keen to see any of you who'd like to come just as soon as we're able to do that.
Martin, it takes us from a global health emergency to something particularly local. There was a question about laundry costs.
Yes, I think I covered that. So we do have a number of laundries around the college, and we have an app that enables people to access that, and there is a charge for each use of the laundry, depending on how often you need to use it. Yes.
And we encourage parents to believe that their students will incur significant costs doing their laundry, whatever the truth may be. The basketball question, we've had a basketball team in college, and that's involved postgrads, undergrads, occasionally fellows as well. And it leads into an issue about the extracurricular life across Cambridge, that there are some things where the college community is big enough to sustain its own autonomous activity or jointly with another college. So, for example, rugby union or women's football, our team is joint with one other college. Men's football, cricket, choir, we have a single college, Selwyn, group that does it. The smaller by numbers types of activities, whatever they are, whether it's a sport like basketball or for example, quite a few of our students do cheerleading, are organised at the university level, and members of all colleges come together to play those, and therefore facilities get shared. So I think we have all-weather tennis courts which are marked up to do both netball and basketball in the sports ground about half a mile away that we share with two other colleges. And, sorry, three other colleges, can't count. And therefore, it is available. It's not on the main college site, but it's a 5-minute bicycle ride and a 10 to 15-minute walk from the main college site to the sports ground, where you've got football, tennis, cricket, hockey, rugby, and then the all-weather tennis courts do turn themselves into whatever is necessary given the markings that they've got. But something like basketball is a good example, or swimming, central facilities are used, where there's a college level, maybe, but there's certainly university level that all students from all colleges would have access to.
And having been prompted to answer a question that I hadn't thought about, I've, while Mike's been talking, looked it up. So the answer is the basketball is essentially the university facility at the University Sports Centre, which is on the West Cambridge site, which is actually very close to Selwyn. So no more really than a 5 or so minute cycle ride away. So that's the answer to the basketball question. It's a university facility though, rather than a college facility.
And the colleges each contribute a capitation to the University Sports Syndicate to help with the upkeep of that. So yeah, that is available to all members.
Absolutely. I'm wondering, Mike, whether we have covered all the questions. So if anybody on the chat says you haven't covered mine, that would be helpful. I'm just flicking through them again. I'm hoping we've actually covered everything.
We're getting close to the speak now or forever hold your peace moment.
Yes.
Well, thank you for those of you who are saying nice things. We appreciate that. The other thing I would want to say as we close is that there are always questions that occur to people after any session. And I'm also used, when we do these things face to face, to people coming up and saying, well, I have a very particular sort of a question. Please do feel free to email the admissions at Cell email address, and the questions can easily be forwarded to either of us if they're in our domains, or the admissions team will be happy to answer them yourselves. And as I said earlier, we hope very much we'll be able to host in-person visits in due course. We have not yet taken a decision on our September open day. We have a date set aside for an in-person open day in September. We have not cancelled that. Some central university stuff has been. And we will be taking decisions. Our hope, touches wood, is that we might be able to do something in person, even if socially distanced, in mid-September. And Mr. Packer, we will need to check with our admissions team and get back to you about whether the recordings are coming offline or not. Some of them might be, but some of them won't be. So we'll get back to you on that one. We've saved the chat, and we will be able to put the admissions team onto that one. Thank you.
Very good. Well, it would have been much more of a pleasure to have spoken to you directly and seen you all. But I hope this has been useful and informative. And as Mike says, I very much reiterate, in the same way as the college being a human scale, if people want to send us emails via the admissions team, you'll get a personal reply from one of us according to what sort of subject you're asking about. So we're very happy to get back to you on any specific questions you have about the college or indeed the university. Great. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.